Well, welcome back. I have done quite a few panels as the VEITH director for the center, and I'm not sure that I have ever been as excited about a panel as I am for today, and mainly because of how well I know the four esteemed panelists that you see in front of you today. The level of respect and admiration that I hold for this group cannot be overstated. They are incredible business leaders in their own right, but they are 10 times better as human beings. And I think you're going to see a little bit about that today. So the conference theme, Redefining Real Estate, the interdisciplinary approach to real estate challenges, wouldn't be complete without an incredibly interdisciplinary panel to talk about why this idea is so important. Our panelists today, I'll do short introductions, and then I'm going to let you hear from them with their own stories on what about their backgrounds has made them so successful, why this idea, an interdisciplinary way of looking at the world and solving problems has made all the difference for them in their lives and their careers. First, Deshay Agee is vice president with Group. He's a 1999 Marquette grad, as well as a Marquette High grad, and a member of the 2005 ACRE inaugural graduating class. Deshay's superpower from an interdisciplinary standpoint, by the way, is that he is a realtor, he's a nonprofit leader, he's a former bid director, he has his master's in construction management, and he's an incredibly accomplished musician. Next to him is Gina Stilp. Gina is the executive director of the Zilber Family Foundation, a 2012 graduate of Marquette's MBA program, where she was also a Trinity Fellow, and she also received her undergraduate degree from Loyola of Chicago. Gina's interdisciplinary superpower is she is one of the most respected nonprofit foundation leaders anywhere, and of course, as a Trinity Fellow at Marquette, followed that up by being the director of development with Habitat in New Orleans post-Katrina, where she was working with grantors and funders from around the world to rebuild the city. She also loves serving others, but really loves real estate as well, especially using real estate as a way to serve communities. To her left, to your right, Bill Loftus is a principal and former president with Spaceco. Bill's a 1986 Marquette engineering grad, and his interdisciplinary superpower is that he's a longtime nonprofit volunteer and board leader, including a past chair of the Center for Real Estate Advisory Board. He has 5 kids. His civil engineering degree mixed with his phenomenal business acumen and leadership, combined with his true servant leadership within his career, has made him into an extraordinary individual. And last but certainly not least, the legendary Barry Mandel. Barry
not that old.
Legendary still works though, Barry. Barry's the chairman and CEO of Mandel Group. He's a Madison undergrad and a Georgetown law alum, and he helped found the ACRE program here along with Mark Epley, who's joined us today. His interdisciplinary superpower is that aside from his legendary career as a real estate developer, he's a massive collaborator, an innovator, a deep supporter of Milwaukee thriving, and a supporter of people of color, and in the last decade has also become one of the best swimmers in the nation, in the world, at the senior level. Please join me in welcoming our panel. We're going to start off with self-introductions and talk about career journeys. Deshay, I think you are a perfect person to begin this. Tell us a little bit about your story, where these multiple areas of training that you have come together, how they've helped prepare you as a leader.
Andy, thank you. Would like to say good morning to everyone. This is where it started for me as a student at Marquette University. For me, as I started, real estate was nowhere in my vision at the time. I graduated from the College of Business here, and I was in newspaper retention sales. Sometimes your career starts off one way and then it ends up another way. Most of us in the room probably feel that way now. I went from newspaper retention sales to radio advertising sales when I graduated from Marquette, and it was because I wanted to learn the music industry, particularly become a hip-hop artist. While I was here on campus, performed at a lot of places. And so when I went into radio sales, I really went there to learn the music industry. And then a relative of mine suggested real estate. Said, hey, instead of taking your commission check and spending that on studio time, go into real estate and you'll have some extra money. So I heard about the ACRE program, and Dr. Epley, just want to shout him out. I didn't know he's in the room. That's amazing. I am here in large part because of Dr. Epley, who I see now. I would ask him to just stand up real quick and wave his hand, please, because we're all here because of him. When I graduated from the ACRE program, Dr. Epley suggested, I be one of those individuals to take an internship. I was fortunate enough to get an internship with Peter Bell, the Bell Chair of Real Estate. I had a chance to work under him for a year. Amazing experience at Pabst Farms, 1,500-acre master plan community in Oconomowoc. From there, Peter suggested, Deshae, you can go and develop Bronzeville. I didn't know what Bronzeville was in 2005. I took his advice. He also suggested that I get my real estate broker's license. At the time, they allowed you to take the sales class and the broker's class back to back, and you can get your license. So I took that, still have that license to this day. Peter said never get rid of it. The one thing I know to do is listen to people who are more advanced in knowledge than myself. I did that. I left Pabst Farms and worked for a developer, and then fortunately got an opportunity to work for the city of Milwaukee for almost 9 years. They created a position called the Bronzeville Project Manager. How ironic that Peter suggested that is something I might do. While at the city, I got a chance to meet with brokers, be a part of the ICSC. A lot of my friends are here. A lot of the brokerage community are in here. For me, from that point, did everything I thought I could do at the city. Tax increment district management, commercial district revitalization, grant programs. Opportunity came. After managing 15 business improvement districts for the city, I thought it was an opportunity for me to have my own district. And I took a position with the city, or with the Historic King Drive Business Improvement District as the executive director of the Historic King Drive bid. Woke up one day and had this thought, said, I'm going to build the best King Drive in the nation. And I spoke to it. What I also learned, the importance of aligning your goals with those who are in position to help make that happen. Former city, Department of City Development, economic development specialist. I went back to the city. While in that role, worked with the alderwoman, worked with neighborhood organizations, and we started to work on a vision to develop this best King Drive in the nation. This is where I found when I have weaknesses, I want to add to those. I want to make those weaknesses my strengths. Went and got a couple of certifications through the National Development Council, took CCIM courses, took every course I could take, probably 9 courses, and then I went and got a construction management master's degree. I think our keynote said it, he's a learner, we should all be learners. From that, it was an opportunity for me to take that vision as a King Drive, building the best King Drive in the nation, did a master's thesis on it, and became what my professor told me was probably the authority on King Drives at that point. The opportunity came for me then after I felt my work was done, about 5.5 years. A friend of mine who's more like my brother, Michael Amem, who's in the room, is the president of Amem Group. He started a company called Amem Group. He has a ton of experience, and he said, it'll be an honor to work with you. For me, I took that opportunity, and now I'm the vice president of Amem Group. More to come later.
Gina.
Good morning. Gina Stilp. My, journey here has a lot of Marquette touch points. I'm the executive director of the Zilber Family Foundation here in Milwaukee, which was founded by Joe Zilber, who's a real estate developer. Joe graduated from Marquette Law School in 1941. And so in many ways, I'm here in this chair representing his foundation because of his education and opportunity at this institution. And then my parents are also both alums and really instilled in me a deep respect for, I think, Jesuit education and servant leadership and social justice work. And so when I finished college from Loyola University, I had no idea what I was doing. I was a business major, but we're really looking for purpose. And so I moved to New Orleans in 2004 to join the AmeriCorps Vista opportunity, and so I worked as a volunteer for a year raising funds for the New Orleans area Habitat for Humanity, which is where I really kind of got my, I guess, my passion for community development, really broadly speaking. And when I got down there, we were doing about 10 houses a year throughout the city of New Orleans. And about a year and a month after I arrived, Hurricane Katrina hit the city. And as many of you will recall, maybe not so much the students who are young, but about 80% of the city flooded, 80% of the homes in New Orleans were damaged or destroyed. And our small team of 4 at New Orleans Habitat came back to the city and just started picking up the pieces. And I think hearing Andy's interest in this interdisciplinary approach, I learned so much in that year following. When you're starting in a city that has been completely devastated, just building a house isn't going to work anymore. And so it was at that moment that my eyes at 25 years old realized how dependent and interdependent public policy, real estate development, community development are to a thriving community and to a thriving city. And so I loved my job there. I spent some days on the job site, which was definitely not where I excelled, but spent most of my time building relationships in the community and raising funds with national and international donors. And we did some amazing work. We built 200 homes in a community in New Orleans that's called the Musicians Village, and it's centered around a music performance center that the Marcellus family funded. And really, it was about building community for the culture bearers of the community. And so I really began to understand the importance of not just building homes, but building homes for the people who are of the community, with the community, for the community, and that it represents what those families had and need to go forward. And so it was a hard decision, but I knew to pursue additional opportunity in the community development space, I needed to pursue a master's degree. And so I then received a Trinity Fellowship here at Marquette, which is a program where you can pursue any master's program that you like, but it has a social justice fellowship angle to it. And so with a cohort of 10 students, all of us in different master's programs, I was able to pursue my degree full-time while working part-time at the Zilber Family Foundation. And it was just a perfect match for me. I was able to learn and use what I was learning in my MBA programs, really, and bring that back to our community engagement approach. I also benefited from Dr. Epley's real estate classes, which was really transformational. We were able to work in neighborhoods on the north side of Milwaukee on real estate development projects on North Avenue that were really difficult. I learned how hard it is to make a capital stack work in an underserved market. Deshay and I sat around a lot of tables together doing design charrettes for the community to make sure that the buildings that we were trying to restore or to build new were what the community wanted and not just what the development community or the funding community wanted. And it was really not what I planned, but just kind of fell in love with the neighborhood work here. I fell in love with the idea that we can collaborate across institutions, public, private, nonprofit sectors, and work in service of the community, which is really what my Jesuit background, Jesuit ideals, and this notion of servant learning are all about. So today, I'm still doing that work. We focus very heavily on affordable housing here in Milwaukee, which I would love to talk more about. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Gina. Bill.
So unlike the students we saw on stage a few minutes ago, I was a really immature 18-year-old when I arrived here at Marquette with very little direction, and came into the school at School of Liberal Arts, and it's now a story that dates me very much, but I remember panicking, thinking about all those students that knew, my friends that knew exactly or thought they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and I really had no idea. So I remember rolling into my second semester at McCormick Hall and doing what most 18-year-olds would do when you think you've made a decision, and I wasn't really well-versed in the Jesuit Ignatian discernment process. This was an 18-year-old throwing a dart. And I called my mom, and I said, I'm going to go into the School of Business. And she said something to the effect, and this was on the landline, mind you. That's what really dates the story. So my mom said, well, really, as a kid, you always like to build things. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go into engineering. Hung up the phone abruptly, applied to the School of Engineering. And for those engineering students in the crowd, and Dr. Federley's here too, representing the school. Having spent almost 10 years on the Construction Engineering Management Advisory Council, every meeting we went through the curriculum. So the curriculum is so tight, right? I went to a Jesuit institution and had basically one theology class. And if you miss your freshman year out of engineering, you go back and do, engineering calculus and so on and so forth. So it was a really rough start for me in the School of Engineering. But that was that was the start of it, and thanks to the faculty that helped me through those odd times. So don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Andy's got on the board that I was president of Space Co, which is he corrected here in the introduction. I'm now a principal at Space Co, and I technically my friend Jim Vogel's here. His wife took care of my Marquette graduation year because it was really '87. And I met one of my first coworkers here by the name of Joe Schmidt, worked for a company right out of school called Seton Engineering Company. And Joe said, "Weren't you an intern?" I said, "Well, not technically. I was recruited to go work on a survey crew." And I said, "Joe, you're remembering that I took a leave of absence." "I do remember that." And he goes, "Where did you go?" And I said, "I left for a couple of months to tour Europe and run with the Bulls." And Andy goes, "Of course you did." So I spent my first 7 years of my career getting my professional engineering license at Seton Engineering Company, and then decided that firm of 7 was a little bit too small for me. I thought my growth was being stunted by the technical nature of the projects I could see, and reluctantly, I had to leave my mentor, a Marquette grad, Tom McCabe, who was just a tremendous mentor, and joined Space Co. When I joined Space Co in the mid-'90s, after about 5 years, I worked my way up the ranks and became president. That was a little intimidating, and talk about not being prepared for that role. In engineering, like many fields, they promote you if you're good at engineering, if you're a decent people person. We worked almost all private sector work, so I was dealing with attorneys and developers, and I was fairly good at that. Reading a balance sheet or running a company was completely foreign to me. That curriculum I just spoke of gave me one accounting class, one econ class, so everything was on-the-job learning. President at 36, and responsibility that I just wasn't prepared for. Not that Marquette fell short of the mark. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that curriculum was so tight, and so that was the things that I think I remember most about working here at Space Co. So that's the story.
Oh yeah, more to come, and running with the Bulls definitely prepared you for that, if nothing else.
That's right.
Running with the Bulls.
Yes,
Wow.
Not swimming, but running.
That's
yeah.
weird. That's great. I'd run too if I were with the Bulls. Anyways, Barry Mandel and Andy, thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be with all of you. Bill, I didn't know before, but I've worked with Gina and Deshay. It's just been a pleasure. I broke this down into, I'm not a playwright, but I broke it down into 4 scenes on my journey. My first scene, kitchen table, 66 years ago. I wore a bow tie even 66 years ago. 53rd and Keefe, 2nd floor, northwest side of Milwaukee, 2nd floor apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 5 people. My father was an accountant, and a lawyer, and became a real estate developer. My mother was an accountant, both graduates of Marquette University. There were a few expectations for me. This is a time, 66 years ago, where kids actually listened to their parents. And they said, "You know what, Barry? You have to go to law school. After you go to law school, you can do anything you want, but you have to go to law school." And then the other thing my mother said to me, she said, "I want you to wake up every morning, and I want you to look at the mirror, and I want you to ask yourself, if you did anything the day before that you're ashamed of, that you would not want to be printed in a newspaper. Well, at that kitchen table with my father being a developer, unlike other families, we talk business. I learned the language of real estate, depreciation, zoning battles, taxes, easements, foreclosures, debt, equity. I was exposed to architects, I was exposed to lawyers, I was exposed to subcontractors, I was exposed to accountants from age 5 till I was 17. Went to Nicolay High School. I was a good student, but I was a better swimmer. I learned to swim when I was 7 years old, and we'll talk about that a little later. Scene 2, 1971 to 1978. Formal education, University of Wisconsin-Madison. Economics major. Afraid to go to business school, because in business schools there's only usually one answer. I liked a lot of possible answers, being an economist. And you could be wrong and right at the same time. But I studied theory, I studied statistics, econometrics, and then I had the great, great, great pleasure of being a student of Professor Grasskamp at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He was my sponsor for my senior thesis as well. So I crossed the street from the economics department to the business school. I took accounting and business law courses, and then on to Georgetown Law School, where I was supposed to become a lawyer. Well, I studied theory, problem solving, reasoning, and took as many courses as I could in real estate. Scene 3, floundering. And I'll tell you, everybody in their life should have a time when they flounder. And floundering helps you with another important aspect of your life, to have some humility in your life, to realize that there's something much larger than yourself out there. Practicing law, I was a miserable lawyer. And I was miserable at it. It was just terrible. Marion came into my office. She was in my same class. We joined together. She said, "Your name is ahead of mine on the letterhead." And I don't know why it is, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I graduated #1 in every class I was in. I have 165 IQ, and I'm going to bury you. I swear, that's a true story. And the truth is, she did bury me. But I learned. John talked about learning. We've mentioned learning before. I learned about the underside of real estate development and practicing law 1978 to 1981. I learned who the players were. I learned about real estate tax, securities, corporate law, and unfortunately, even litigation. I returned to Milwaukee in 1981 after only 2 years of practicing law. My father, a real estate developer, really had ended his development career but managed his properties. He gave me a desk and a paycheck and unlimited opportunity. Unlimited opportunity to find myself while I was floundering. And he introduced me to a gentleman named Jack Collier. He was my age. He had a business major at UWM, and he actually was a contractor. Something complementary to what I understood. I know what a nail and a hammer is, and a screw and a screwdriver, but that's about it. Well, certainly at that time. Well, we built 4 condominiums together, and then we won a request for proposal to build 332 apartment units. I was 32 years old at the time. I was the dog that caught the car. I didn't know what to do with it. Scene 4. Scene 4 was 1985. You know the dog that caught the car? Well, we caught that 332 unit development, but we also caught Trammell Crow Residential, the largest residential real estate multifamily company in the United States of America. It was a launching pad for me. I learned from the very, very best. I learned about the multifamily business. I learned about risk management. I learned about the power of culture and the importance of servant leadership. And one other thing, going back to the mirror, and it's something I have on my desk every day. I have it, it's a coaster from Trammell Crow himself that says, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And so we started Mandel Group in 1991. And here I am, sitting here today with my panelists. And after building more developments than I care to count, I sit here sharing with you insight on the importance of interdisciplinary training and approach to real estate. Thank you.
How about those stories? Okay, now we have some great stuff to unpack, don't we? In a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about the current environment. From there, we're going to go into some case studies that you all have experienced, so some stories around things that can really bring to light some of these themes here today that our panelists have experienced. And of course, we're going to end with some advice and hopefully be able to take a question or two. I think our student table at the front knows that they're going to be called on, so they'll be ready to go now. Thanks to Linda for warming them up. Let's come to today. We've heard about all of your histories, but today as leaders, we're facing quite a few challenges. It's a difficult market environment as we deal with lower transaction volumes, higher interest rates. Our students certainly are feeling fewer job opportunities out there because of some of this stuff. Let's dive into this a little bit because I know all of you know that it is in these most challenging times where there's also the most opportunity. And so I'd love to hear from our panelists a little bit more about how they're seeing the world right now and the strategies they're starting to think about to tackle the challenges we see right now. Deshay, why don't you kick us off?
For me, the biggest thing is controlling what we can't control. Mm-hmm. We can talk about interest rates, material and equipment unavailability and long lead times. Those are things that are pretty much outside of our control. But what is within our control to a point is the schedules of some of our projects that we're getting a chance to work on. Managing people, learning new things, learning new programs, learning new ways to make projects happen. More collaboration and advocacy, talking with city government, talking with nonprofit organizations. When I think about some of the projects that we're getting a chance to work on right now, and just to give a little bit about Group is an organization that represents owners who are looking to develop projects, be it apartments, institutional, office, and we also will own and manage our own projects. So the ability to diversify our portfolio in terms of what we do on an everyday basis from a project management perspective is important. I think sometimes when you look at it from an interdisciplinary perspective, most of the times our focus is on what we do, but we also have to learn what others do. And I think about some of the new programs that are out here for us to access funding from in order to fill some of the gaps. Tax increment district financing, I'm sure if I ask a number of folks will raise their hands, they may be aware of it, but just not sure how to use that tool. That's a tool you should learn to use. Tools like MMSD, infrastructure grants, green infrastructure project funding. There are tools out there that can be of assistance. Solar for Good, there are other programs that may be available for you to help with some of your real estate projects that it just may not be on your radar, but organizations are sitting waiting for us to call them, WEDC, Brownfield grants. These are programs that are out there to help sort of fill some of the funding gaps to make projects happen, but there are processes, and there's a requirement for patience. That's probably the biggest thing I would encourage everybody. Things are taking more time. Nothing's moving at the speed that we want it to. And in order for us to actually get to the finish line for a lot of the projects we're working on, we're going to have to just kind of see where we are, extend that timeline just a little bit, but there are so many people that want to see projects happen from the government perspective, from the neighborhood perspective, from a lending perspective. When a lender is on a project and funding for that project is made available through them, there's going to be a pretty long checklist and just, again, things to become familiar with. Projects do not happen by happenstance. There's a lot of man hours, a lot of woman hours that are being put into making sure that these projects happen. And again, folks like Gina and Zilber, when I think about one of our smaller projects that we got a chance to work on 25th and North Avenue, that project would not happen without a partnership with Zilber. Gina coming to the site, seeing the project, understanding the project. It went through various levels of communication with organizations like IFF, other funding tools that are out there, new market tax credits. So the theme of learning is something that we just really should embed in our everyday, whether that is an audiobook, learning something new, whether that is a course that you may need to take. Maybe it's a Microsoft project that you need to learn, just to be able to ensure that you have a further trajectory in your career. I know for me, I always, again, took what I thought was my weakness and tried to make it my strength. Spend a little more time learning that, and I still do that every day. I'm listening to something while I'm doing work. I'm going home and I'm reading things. The other thing I would encourage too, just from a how do we make things happen, you have to network. You have to find your circle. You have to find people who are going to give you the good energy and the support. But sometimes you're going to feel at times, I can't do this. But believe that you can and keep moving forward towards it.
It's funny, inherent in the idea of interdisciplinary is this idea that it's all about learning, because you can never know it all, right? And this idea,
Right.
we can get specialized, but the generalized nature of wanting to learn things. I noticed one thing, it just occurred to me that I had not thought to bring up today. Everybody on this panel, I have either shared books with, or articles with, or podcasts with, or great ideas with over meals. That constant learning that you talked about it really truly is so important.
The only thing I just want to add to that is you asked me to speak to this, and I won't speak long, but the music, for me.
Music.
I've always wanted to do music. I think there's a creative aspect that each person has, that we're whole people, but we often don't get a chance to live out our fullness because of the perspectives that we think someone will think we shouldn't do X or we shouldn't do X. So I would encourage everybody, because creativity is going to allow you to do things that just on normal thinking you might not do. But when you think outside of that box and envision that there is no box or no circle, there's a lot you can accomplish.
Fantastic. I can hear you talk about music more, Deshay. I know we have limited time on our panel, but I love that aspect of your life. Gina, when we talk about the tough environment right now and how you're facing those challenges, you're also investing in some of the most disinvested neighborhoods in Milwaukee. Those are also the areas where you can have the biggest impact for positive and for good. And I know that's kind of at the core of the foundation. It's the core of what Joe Zilber wanted. Tell us more about the strategies you guys are looking at right now.
Well, we're very focused on affordable housing. And as everybody knows, if you pick up a newspaper or turn on the TV, there's an affordable housing crisis in the United States. In Milwaukee, that looks like we're 33,000 units short for rental apartments that are affordable to people who are poor. And we're 33,000 units short on Black and Hispanic homeownership to get to racial equity with white families in the city. Homeownership is the easiest pathway to wealth building in our community, and so if we want to reverse cycles of generational poverty, we have to figure out how to incent people to build entry-level, single family or duplex housing, and there's very little incentive to do that. There are very few financing tools for that, and there's not a lot of profit in it. And so, as Deshay noted, I mean, currently the model is that philanthropy covers the gap because the market's forces aren't working in our favor. It's not a sustainable way to solve the crisis that we're facing in our community. And so we know that we need inventory, and so we're working really hard to get creative on how to find not only the financing tools to create inventory, but to innovate in construction. I am a generalist. I am an expert in none of those areas, but what I am expert at is trying to build a network of people who are, and a network of people who care about those issues. Milwaukee will be a better place if we can solve for that affordable housing crisis. Our families are spending more than half of their income every day on their rent in substandard units. And so that's what we're laser focused on, and it only happens when we work together across these disciplines.
Yeah, the partnership aspect, I mean, it's just so critically important. This is clearly a superpower that you have, by the way, and everyone who knows you knows that. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Bill, how about you guys? You know, Michelle, our good friend Michelle Panovich, former board chair and current chair of the REAP Investment Committee, always likes to say that you know what's coming before anyone else. Is that true, Bill? Is that?
Well, Michelle, that's way too much credit for me. Michelle has taught me so much. I mean, she's incredible. She did pay Spaceco a very high compliment back in the day when she said, Spaceco will come up with a business solution to an engineering problem. And I thought that was really telling. In the consulting business, if you're going to differentiate yourself, you can't be an engineer of no. And I was thinking about what my fellow panelists just commented on and the continued learning. And Andy mentioned podcasts and books and things of this nature. But what really frustrated me with my young engineers back in the day was when we would get together, when Gina would put together a great group of professionals, of specialists, and typically you would go around the table and each specialist would talk about what the specific issues were with that project. And I would see the civil engineer after talking about the surveying and the site specifics and the stormwater and the infrastructure. And it would get to the mechanical engineer and I'd see my engineer push away from the table. I go, oh no, that's when you push forward. You sit up straight. If you're gonna be a really good civil, you better learn more about mechanical engineering at this meeting or the lawyer at the table speaking about the entitlement process. This is when you're taking those copious notes and like, getting smarter and smarter, because to be a good consultant, the more you know about your fellow teammates and what their issues are, you'll know where the constraints are. So with respect to what we're seeing on the civil side right now, and this is directly related to real estate, I promise not to put this group to sleep, but if you're talking about climate, right, just climate and stormwater and rainfall events. When I came out of school, the 100-year event was, 7+ inches of storm in 24 hours. We're now sizing infrastructure for rainfall events that are in excess of 11 inches per hour, or for a 24-hour storm, excuse me. So, and then you take this to the real estate market, and what is like the city of Chicago, or what is Cook County doing, the Metropolitan Water Commission as it relates to stormwater? Well, we're fighting really hard to keep a tool in the toolbox for the real estate community. And that tool is basically a stormwater credit trading program. So for the brokers who are in the audience who are unfamiliar with this, this is like the ability to take some of your stormwater management and move it elsewhere. Or for the municipalities represented in the group, it's an ability to say, stormwater is really expensive to account for in my central business district. All the developers are having to put it underground, which is their least favorite thing to do. It's super expensive. So why don't we build a regional facility just outside the central business district, which will help the neighbors downstream who are experiencing flooding, and will incentivize the businesses we really want to come into that central business district by simply buying credits or not charging them at all for those stormwater credits. So this is a program that right now some of the powers that be in the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District are trying to table. It's been very successful in DC. It's been somewhat successful in other communities, but I think it's like TIF or any other financial tool for a developer or for a community to use. It's also a great tool for nonprofits, because a nonprofit I've sat on a board here for a better part of 15 years for Bellarmine. It's a Jesuit retreat house in Barrington. and they sit on 80 plus acres, and it's a beautiful piece of property. But could we be doing more? Following the Pope's encyclical, could we be doing more? Could we be providing stormwater management for the downstream property owners, putting a conservation easement over that piece of property, storing that stormwater, and providing a revenue stream for the nonprofit in selling those credits? Those stormwater credits sell for probably about $300,000 per acre foot, which is a funny unit of measurement. I can ask the engineers at the table in front of me what an acre foot of storage is, but it's basically one foot of depth of water over an acre, 43,560. So it's like that's the volume you're actually trading. The other thing I think that's on our plate right now is what we would call best management practices. This is also something in the development community. You're going to be asked to do all sorts of things from water quality to green building design. And you as a developer are going to need to know this stuff. Right now there's a trend politically, I'll say politically, I don't think it's supported with really analytical, technical people for the elimination of natural gas service to buildings. This is a short-sighted solution by our leaders right now. Pure electrification is the trend, and it's something I would ask everyone in this room to get smarter on and continue to watch, because especially for affordable housing components, paying for gas, electric right now is through the roof. And while it might appear, like a great approach, this day and age is probably not a long-term solution to, operating expenses. With that?
No, this is it, Bill. I mean, business solutions to engineering problems. I mean, I'm so curious. Now you have me curious to learn more about these things. These are the things you're worrying about now. And I know through conversations with Michelle, whenever you say these things, when people sit up and notice, it always benefits them. So I'm glad you brought this up. Barry, aside from pulling in students as investors for deals to solve the market climate, what else are you guys focusing on?
I want to thank them. The truth is that it's the most uncertain time that I've ever experienced in my career. The fundamentals are very good for apartments. The problem is that there are so many factors that are out of your control that it's really time, as other people have said here today. I'm so glad we're on the same page. We probably should do a deal together.
In.
Well, was it in? Oh, wow. You have to use all your senses today because there's virtually no visibility. You have to, as I said, listen and learn. And one of the best listeners of any entrepreneur I've ever met and spent time with was Joe Zilber. He would call me when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, at like 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night and said, Barry, I have a deal. It's in California. I said, I don't know anything about California. He said, just hold on. Let me give you the facts. And he would just call, listen, and learn all the time. Well, today, almost being virtually blind, I agree with Deshay. Exactly what you said is written on my notes. Control what you can control. In 2021, due to an advisory board that I have, we started really our strategies for the next cycle. In 2007, my advisory board, and two of the advisory board members are here, I think today. I think Mick Hatch is here. Are you here, Mick? Yes, right over here. And Mark Epley. One a lawyer, one an academician. Well, they persuaded me in 2007 to sell, and in 2008 and 2009, I was really happy. They persuaded me to sell in 2021 through 2023, and again, really happy. Liquidity is a really good thing to have in turbulent times. We sold 1/3 of our entire portfolio between 21 and 23. That gives you staying power, and it gives you optionality. And that's what you need when you're running a business. And then what you can control, risk management, deleverage. Debt is not your friend today. Avoid recourse, or at least triggers of recourse liability in the terms of your loans and your guarantees. Manage your overhead. Manage your pursuit costs. Diversify your revenue streams. Instead of developing, we may do fee development for third parties, management for third parties. In troubled times, municipalities may be anxious to do deals with you. Public-private partnerships. I'd suggest underwriting everybody. We underwrite everybody we deal with today, whether or not it's our architects, our engineers, our contractors, our subcontractors, and quite frankly, even our banks. Then, invest in yourself. It's really, really important for you to be mentally and physically well. And as you're learning and listening, also remember the mirror that I talked about before, because your character will be defined more in stressful times than it will be in easy times. Your character will be defined when you have to belly up to the bar when things aren't going well. And at the same time, learn to swim. Keep your head above water, because in turbulent seas, there are great opportunities.
Your late surge in your swim career, Barry, is inspiring to us all.
Wow. It was a late surge, I want you to know. 57 to 71. I mean, my God. I can't believe I can get on the starting block.
So we've gotten a lot of great advice, so we'll probably skip over that. We'll have time for at least one or two questions, but I'm gonna get our panelists back to the idea of a case study. Let's talk about something that each of them have worked on that's been successful, especially from an interdisciplinary standpoint. Students, we're coming to you for at least one question after this. Let's go ahead and hit it. Bill, we're going to come back to you to start off this one.
Okay, so I couldn't decide which projects to speak of. I'm going to speak of the successful one, which was a nonprofit, led by a nonprofit, CNI. And for those of you in the crowd who know where the Pullman district is, or who George Pullman was for that matter, on the city of Chicago, is basically 111th Street and the Bishop Ford Expressway, which if you're golfers is right by Harborside Golf Course. And this property was originally part of Pullman's holdings. Pullman was a railroad car manufacturing facility later, and was the home of the start of the labor movement, which comes into part of this story as well. After Pullman, Ryerson Steel took it over, so this was a very much a brownfield, environmentally challenged site. And then it was politically challenged in the sense that this 220 acres of real estate was basically, Walmart could not break through in the city of Chicago. Walmart was just boxed out from the city because they weren't paying a living wage, they weren't agreeing to labor negotiations, and there was no way to politically get a project through the city without going through Alderman Burke's office, and who's head of the finance committee, because everyone needed TIF dollars to build a decent-sized Walmart in the city. So it took a lot of great political courage for Alderman Beal in the 9th Ward, who's still that alderman, man I really respect, who stepped up and said to labor, at this point, we're going to go and we're going to find a different financing mechanism to bring this Walmart to fruition. So in actuality, that was the first tenant in this park. It was the first Walmart ever approved in the city of Chicago. It was not the first one built. Walmart had eyed more locations of greater returns or greater projections, so they built those facilities first. But Walmart came in, followed by Amazon, followed by Whole Foods, followed by Method. if you're not familiar with Method Manufacturing, they're the fancy soaps, the fragrant, fancy bottle packaging, fancy colors that you see in a lot of the public restrooms. And that, by the way, was a company, if you ever listen to Guy Raz or listen to How I Built This, listen to that podcast. This is perfect for today's discussion. 3 college students at Stanford, an engineer, a marketing, and I don't know, I can't remember what the third major was. And they started thinking that the green cleaning supply products weren't green enough. They were too toxic. So they started mixing this up in their dorm room or their off-campus housing bathtub and started selling this door to door. These guys crushed it. And Method Manufacturing, which is also a really cool facility to visit, was the first LEED Platinum industrial building in the city of Chicago. Matter of fact, in the state of Illinois. It housed Gotham Greens on the roof. We actually did greenhouses on the roof. I actually had a funny story with one of the founders. When I met him, I told him I would like to harvest water from this large sanitary sewer and put it into his products. I said, we won't use potable water for your products. He goes, Bill, that is the dumbest idea. He goes, we're selling soap products. How can I tell people you're harvesting water off a sanitary sewer and putting it into our products for cleaning? But I thought at the time it was a great way of preserving Lake Michigan. So that didn't go over well with Method. But still to this day, it was that facility is completely built out. In addition, because of that labor movement I referenced before, it's now part of that facility, or just next to it, Space Co worked on establishing the national park. When Obama was president, Obama cleared the way for that national park. So there's museums and vibrant, economic things, and basically a dormant brownfield. And that is what really gets me excited. My mom was right. I really like to build things.
So I realize we're getting short on time, so I'm going to prompt Deshay and Gina and Barry just whet our audience's appetite a little bit for a project name that you would love to be asked about story later as it relates to the kind of this interdisciplinary approach. We won't have time to go through this in a lot of detail, but just give us that short name. What is something we should ask you about, Deshay?
Can I get 30 seconds?
Yes, Gina's ready.
30 seconds.
Well, we're working on one together. Yeah. TIF funding for non-contiguous residential development.
Oh, yeah. TIF funding for non-contiguous residential. Great. Okay, perfect. So I think she got you off the hook there, Deshay. Great. Barry?
I think you should ask me about something that really wasn't a development. It was about my experience at the Aspen Institute in an interdisciplinary panel.
Which prepared you for today.
Yes.
Nice of them to do that for our audience.
Right.
For sure.
I would just say,
please, Deshay.
ask me about best King drive in the nation.
Yeah, you did it. We have time for one question. Let's honor our students in this. Students, does anyone have a question for our panel? Yeah, Frank, go ahead.
Obviously, all of you are in management roles. What have been the hardest things to kind of adapt to when managing others?
So the question is, all of our leaders here have been in management roles. What have been the hardest things to adapt to in terms of being in those roles? Deshay, you want to start?
I would say it's the finding good talent is one part of it, and then the management of people sometimes. You're going to manage yourself as best as you can in terms of being able to accomplish the things you can do in a day, but sometimes there may be other individuals, contractors, or so forth, that you can't necessarily control them. You can push them, and you can want them to do what you need them to do, and you can incentivize or de-incentivize them from doing things. But I would say that the management of people is probably the main thing for me.
That's great. Gina?
I agree. Communication, so making sure that you're adapting your communication style as a leader to best fit employees or people that you're working with. So it's not always, I want my way to be the best way, but it's not always.
That's a great one. Don't,
Mine would just relate to my experience with my 5 children in coaching. I coached over 400 travel games of soccer in my day, and I think I translated that to like a really good coach is bringing the best out of all those different youth sports participants, and they're all different. Same with your employees. I coach them as individuals, and they've all got different needs. I have the luxury of doing that with a firm of 80 people, but that would be my advice.
that's so great. Barry, take us home.
Well, this one is, really easy and sort of wonderful and natural for me. And that is, I told you my parents went to Marquette. I went to Georgetown Law School. I'm a full-fledged Jesuit. Servant leadership is something that comes so easy to you when you understand that empowering people and giving them opportunity, giving them the resources to be the best they can be in their career, not job, but career. That is the most beautiful thing to watch. And today, I have to tell you really from my heart to see Deshay here and be with him today after being in the ACRE program and everything that he has accomplished, it sort of brings tears to my eyes because he was in my first class where I spoke.
Thank you, Barry.
No better way to end than with the idea of servant leadership. So please join me in thanking our incredible panelists today. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.